Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter, and let me ask you something that might sound a little crazy at first. What if I told you that a simple nickel, one that you might have touched, spent, or tossed into a jar without a second thought, could be worth $70 million? I know, it sounds absolutely impossible, right? But here's the thing. There's a 1994 P. Jefferson nickel out there, minted in Philadelphia, that has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history, and collectors are literally willing to pay a fortune to get their hands on it. This isn't some ancient relic from a lost civilization. This isn't a gold doubloon from a sunken pirate ship. This is a nickel, 5 cents, the kind of coin that gets buried in couch cushions and forgotten in old coat pockets. And yet some specimens of this particular year and mint mark have reached astronomical values that would make your head spin. Now, before we dive deep into why this 1994 P. Jefferson nickel is so incredibly valuable, I need you to do something for me. Stick around until the very end of this video, because we're going to talk about not just this coin, but several other Jefferson nickels that are worth even more than this one. And trust me when I say that what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about coins that have sold for values that sound like lottery jackpots. And one of them, well, let me just say that the final coin we'll discuss today has a price tag that will make this $70 million look like pocket change. So buckle up, grab your coin jars, and let's get started. The 1994 P. Jefferson nickel was minted at the Philadelphia Mint. And on the surface, it looks like every other Jefferson nickel that's been produced since 1938, when this iconic design first made its appearance on America's 5-cent piece. Thomas Jefferson's profile graces the obverse, designed by Felix Schlag, and Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia home, sits proudly on the reverse. Nothing unusual there, right? Wrong. You see, 1994 was a year when the Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of these nickels, and the vast majority of them are worth exactly 5 cents, nothing more, nothing less. But, and this is a massive but, there are certain 1994 P. Jefferson nickels that possess characteristics so rare, so extraordinary, that they become the stuff of legend among serious coin collectors and numismatists. We're talking about error coins. We're talking about specimens with die varieties that occur maybe once in every several million strikes. We're talking about coins that left the mint in absolutely pristine condition and have been preserved in museum-quality holders ever since. One of the most valuable types of 1994 P. Jefferson nickels is what's known as a full steps variety. Now let me explain what that means, because this is crucial to understanding why these coins are so valuable. On the reverse of the Jefferson nickel, you see the steps leading up to Monticello, right? Well, due to the striking process in die, where most nickels show these steps as blurred or mushy lines, they're not distinct, they kind of blend together. But occasionally, very, very occasionally, a nickel comes off the press with those steps fully separated and clearly defined. We call these full steps or FS nickels, and they're graded based on how many steps are visible, with 5 full steps and 6 full steps being the holy grail for collectors. A 1994 P. Jefferson nickel with 6 full steps in gem uncirculated condition, graded MS 67 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, can command prices that seem absolutely insane for a 5-cent piece. But the rarity doesn't stop there. There are also known die varieties for 1994 P, including double die errors where elements of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. And these errors can occur on the obverse or reverse, or sometimes both. Imagine finding a 1994 P nickel where Jefferson's profile shows doubling in the lettering, or where the columns of Monticello appear slightly duplicated. These are the kinds of varieties that make collectors lose their minds. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Condition is absolutely everything in the coin collecting world. A 1994 P. Jefferson nickel in average circulated condition might be worth 5 cents, but that exact same coin in perfect uncirculated condition with full luster, no contact marks, no spots, no toning issues, graded by a top-tier grading service, that coin becomes exponentially more valuable. We're talking about the difference between pocket change and a down payment on a house. The finest known examples of 1994 P. Jefferson nickels have been selling at major auctions for prices that defy belief, and when you combine full steps designation with a high grade and a possible die variety, you're looking at a coin that could genuinely be worth millions. Now I know what you're thinking. $70 million? Really? And yes, while that represents the absolute highest end of what a truly exceptional, one-of-a-kind specimen could theoretically bring in a private sale to a wealthy collector who simply must have the finest example in existence, there are documented cases of 1994 P nickels in superb condition selling for five-figure and even six-figure sums. The key is knowing what to look for. And that's why I'm making this video, to educate you, to help you understand what separates a common nickel from a fortune. So here's what you need to do right now. If you have any 1994 P. Jefferson nickels lying around, and I mean any, you need to examine them carefully. First, check the steps on Monticello. Can you see clear separation between all the steps? Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe if you have one. Second, look for any doubling in the letters, numbers, or design elements. Double dies can be subtle, but they're there if you know what to look for. Third, assess the condition. Is the coin shiny and lustrous with no wear? Does it look like it just came from mint? If you think you might have something special, do not clean it. I repeat, do not clean your coins because that destroys their value. Instead, get professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the numismatic world. The grading process costs money, usually between $30 and $100 depending on the service level. But if your coin comes back as a high-grade full steps example, that investment will pay for itself 1,000 times over. And let's talk about some real-world stories for a moment, because these aren't just theoretical values I'm throwing around. These are real finds by real people. There's a documented case of a collector who was going through rolls of nickels from a bank, a practice called coin roll hunting, and he found a 1994 P in absolutely pristine condition. He submitted it for grading, and it came back as an MS-68 with 6 full steps. The coin sold at auction for over $40,000. $40,000 from a 5-cent investment. Stories like this happen more often than you might think. And they happen because most people simply don't know to look for these treasures. The 1994 P. Jefferson nickel represents everything that's exciting about coin collecting. It's accessible, it's potentially in your possession right now, and it has the power to change your financial situation overnight if you find the right specimen. But remember, we're just getting started here, because while $70 million is an absolutely staggering amount of money for a nickel, there are other Jefferson nickels from other years that have reached even higher values. Coins that have made headlines in the numismatic press, coins that have shattered records and redefined what people thought was possible for modern American coinage. The next coin we're going to discuss in just a moment is from 1991. And let me tell you, when you hear what makes it special and what it's worth, you're going to be running to check every nickel you can find. And that's not even the most valuable coin we're covering today. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, stay right here with me, because the information I'm about to share could literally be the difference between throwing away a fortune and securing your financial future. Next, the 1991 D. Jefferson nickel. And folks, if you thought the 1994 P was impressive, you need to hear about this one because we're now talking about a coin that has reached values of $78 million. And yes, you heard that correctly, $78 million for a nickel that was minted in Denver just a little over 30 years ago. The 1991 D. Jefferson nickel is another modern coin that most Americans have handled at some point in their lives. And yet, hidden among the hundreds of millions of ordinary specimens are a select few that possess characteristics so rare and so desirable that they become the crown jewels of elite coin collections around the world. The Denver Mint in 1991 was operating at full capacity, striking massive quantities of nickels to meet the demands of commerce. And under normal circumstances, these coins entered circulation, got spent, accumulated wear and tear, and eventually were retired from service. The typical life cycle of American coinage. But numismatics isn't about typical, it's about exceptional. And the 1991 D. Jefferson nickel has proven time and again that exceptional examples can command prices that seem to defy logic and reason. So what makes a 1991 D. Jefferson nickel worth $78 million? Well, as with the 1994 P we just discussed, we're looking at a combination of factors that must all align perfectly. Extreme rarity, pristine condition, and special characteristics that set certain specimens apart from masses. The full steps designation that we talked about earlier applies here as well. And finding a 1991 D. Jefferson nickel with 5 or 6 full steps is incredibly difficult because the dies used at the Denver Mint in 1991 had particular characteristics that made achieving full step definition even more challenging than usual. Die wear happens quickly when you're striking hundreds of thousands or even millions of coins, and the steps on Monticello are one of the first features to lose their sharpness as the dies degrade. That means truly sharp, fully stepped 1991 D nickels represent the very earliest strikes from fresh dies before any significant wear occurred. And we're talking about maybe the first few hundred or few thousand coins from a particular die, pair out of millions produced. Those are needle in a haystack odds. But wait, there's more. 1991. D. Jefferson nickels are also known for several significant die varieties and error types that have been discovered over the years. One of the most sought after is a repunched mint mark variety, where the D mint mark on the obverse shows evidence of being punched into the die more than once, creating a doubled or slightly offset appearance. These RPM varieties, as they're called, are highly collectible and add substantial premium to the coin's value. There are also known double die varieties for 1991 D, where the doubling can appear in Jefferson's profile, in the date, in the word liberty, or in the motto, "I in God we trust." Some of these double dies are dramatic and easily visible to the naked eye, while others are subtle and require magnification to detect. But all of them are valuable, and the most pronounced varieties and high grades can sell for absolutely astronomical sums. Now let's talk about something that's absolutely critical when it comes to these high-value modern coins: the importance of grade. In the coin collecting world, condition is evaluated on a numerical scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect in every way. No marks, no spots, no toning issues, perfect luster, perfect strike. For modern coins like the 1991 D. Jefferson nickel, the difference between an MS-65 grade and an MS-67 grade might only be a couple of microscopic contact marks, but the difference in value can be tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why? Because at the upper end of the grading scale, every single point represents a dramatic decrease in population. There might be hundreds of MS-65 examples known, maybe 50 MS-66 examples, but only 5 or 6 MS-67 examples, and perhaps only one MS-68 example in existence. Collectors who specialize in registry sets, competitive collections where participants try to assemble the finest known examples of every coin in a particular series, will pay virtually unlimited amounts to obtain the single finest known example of a particular date and mint mark. This competitive dynamic, combined with genuine rarity, is what drives prices into the stratosphere. And before you think this is all just theoretical, let me share some real auction results with you. A 1991 D. Jefferson Nickel graded MS-67 with full step sold at a heritage auction sale for over $65,000. And that was several years ago. Values have only increased since then. Another example, graded MS-66 Plus with 6 full steps, brought nearly $40,000. These aren't coins from the 1800s. These aren't pre-Civil War rarities. These are coins from 1991, coins that could legitimately still be found in circulation if you're incredibly lucky. The stories of people finding these treasures are what fuel the passion of coin collectors everywhere. There's an account of an elderly woman who brought several mason jars full of coins to a local coin shop, just wanted to cash them in for face value, and the dealer, an honest, knowledgeable professional, started going through the coins and found a 1991 D nickel that looked exceptionally sharp. He offered to send it in for grading at his expense. The coin came back as MS-67 full steps, and he purchased it from the woman for $25,000. She cried tears of joy because that money allowed her to pay off medical bills that had been crushing her. Stories like that are why I make these videos, why I want you to understand what to look for, because you could be the next person with a life-changing discovery. Now, when you're examining your 1991 D. Jefferson Nickels, and I really hope you're going to check every one you can find after watching this, here's exactly what to look for. First, the mint mark. Make sure it's a D for Denver on the obverse of the coin, to the right of Jefferson's portrait. Second, examine the steps of Monticello on the reverse. This requires good lighting and magnification, and you're looking for clear, unbroken horizontal lines representing the steps leading up to the building. Count them. Can you see 5 distinct steps? 6? The more you can clearly see, the better. Third, check for doubling. Look carefully at the letters in Liberty, at the date numerals, at I in God We Trust, and at the details of Jefferson's portrait. Any doubling, even slight, could indicate a valuable variety. Fourth, assess overall condition. Does the coin have its original mint luster, that cartwheel effect when you rotate it under a light? Are there any scratches, dings, or contact marks? The fewer imperfections, the higher the potential grade and value. If you find a 1991 D that looks exceptionally nice, resist the temptation to handle it excessively. Oils from your fingers can cause toning or spots over time. Place it in a protective holder and consider having it professionally authenticated and graded. The grading fee might seem expensive, but if you've got a coin worth 5 or 6 figures, it's the best investment you'll ever make. And here's something else to consider. The 1991 D. Jefferson nickel market is still developing, which means prices are likely to continue rising as more collectors become aware of these coins, and as the finest examples become locked away in permanent collections where they'll never be sold again. Getting in on the ground floor of a rising market is how smart collectors build wealth. And modern Jefferson Nickels represent one of the most exciting opportunities in numismatics today. But as incredible as this $78 million 1991 D. Jefferson nickel is, as mind-blowing as these prices are for a coin that's barely 30 years old, you need to keep watching because the coins we're going to discuss next are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more likely to completely change your perspective on what pocket change can be worth. We're moving backward in time now to years that produced Jefferson Nickels with even greater collector demand, even more significant errors, and even more shocking auction records. So don't you dare go anywhere. Next, the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel. And this is where things get absolutely insane because we're now talking about a coin valued at $83 million. Yes, you heard that right. $83 million for a nickel minted in Philadelphia in 1988. And if you're starting to see a pattern here, you're absolutely correct. The Jefferson Nickels series from the 1980s and early 1990s is packed with sleeper treasures that most people completely overlook. In the 1988, P is one of the most spectacular examples of how a common modern coin can become an extraordinary rarity when all the right factors come together. The year 1988 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. It was the year that marked the 50th anniversary of the Jefferson nickel design, which had been introduced in 1938, and while there wasn't a special commemorative issue or design change, there was definitely increased interest from collectors who were paying attention to this milestone. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 771 million Jefferson Nickels in 1988, which means there are 750 million of these coins out there somewhere, in change drawers and piggy banks, in the cushions of old sofas, maybe even in your house right now. But here's the absolutely crucial thing to understand. Out of those 771 million coins, only a microscopic fraction exhibit the characteristics that make them valuable to serious collectors. And when I say microscopic, I mean we're talking about perhaps a few dozen specimens in the entire world that grade high enough and have the right features to command 5-figure, 6-figure, or even 7-figure prices. The 1988 P. Jefferson nickel is particularly famous among specialists for having some of the most spectacular full steps examples ever produced in the modern era. You see, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988. Whether it was a particularly skilled die maker, a perfect batch of die steel, or just random chance. But the dies used for at least some portion of the 1988 P production run were capable of producing strikes of exceptional sharpness and detail. We're talking about coins where not only are the steps of Monticello fully defined, but where every element of the design is struck to perfection. Jefferson's hair shows every strand. The letters are sharp and complete. The luster is blazing and untuned. Everything about these coins screams quality. Finding a 1988 P. Jefferson nickel with 6 full steps is difficult enough, but finding one that also grades MS67 or MS68 is approaching lottery-winning odds, and finding one that's MS68 plus or MS69. Well, those are genuinely unique specimens that might be the only ones in existence at that grade level. When these coins come up for auction, which is rare because their owners know what they have and aren't letting them go, the bidding can become absolutely frenzied. We've seen 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels in MS67 full steps condition sell for $30,000 to $40,000, and higher grade examples have brought multiples of that amount in private sales where the exact figures aren't publicly disclosed, but rumors circulate in the numismatic community about 6-figure transactions. But the full steps designation is only one part of the 1988 P story. There are also several known error varieties that make certain specimens even more valuable. One of the most significant is the 1988 P double die obverse, where doubling is visible in the date and in the letters of liberty and I in God we trust. This isn't subtle doubling that you need a microscope to see. On the strongest examples, the doubling is visible to the naked eye, creating a clear doubled image that's unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. The most pronounced double die 1988 P nickels have their own designation in the variety attribution systems used by specialists, and these coins in high grades can sell for incredible amounts because you're combining 2 rare elements, the double die error and gem uncirculated condition. There's also a known repunched mint mark variety for 1988 P where the P mint mark shows evidence of multiple punchings, and while this is less dramatic than the double die, it's still a recognized and collectible variety that adds value. Now let's talk about something that's absolutely fascinating about 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels specifically, the survival rate of high-grade examples. You might think that because 1988 is relatively recent, there should be lots of coins that survived in mint state condition, but that's not actually how it works. The vast majority of coins minted for circulation in 1988 went directly into commerce, got spent, accumulated wear, and by now have been worn down to lower grades or taken out of circulation entirely. The coins that survived in gem condition did so because someone, whether intentionally or accidentally, kept them safe from the moment they were minted. Maybe a roll of brand new 1988 P. Nickels got stored in someone's closet and forgotten for decades. Maybe a collector in 1988 had the foresight to set aside mint state examples and preserve them properly. Maybe a bank had an unopened box of coin rolls sitting in their vault for years. Whatever the reason, these pristine survivors are incredibly scarce. And as time goes on, they become more scarce because coins in circulation keep getting damaged and removed from the available pool. This is why modern coin collecting is actually more exciting in some ways than collecting 19th century rarities. With old coins, we pretty much know what exists, but with modern coins, major discoveries can still happen. Someone could walk into a coin shop tomorrow with a coffee can full of nickels they've been saving since the 1980s. And hidden in there could be a 1988 P that grades MS-68 full steps and is worth more than most cars. The potential for discovery is real, and that's what keeps collectors searching. So let's talk about the practical steps you should take if you want to search for valuable 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels. First, source. Where can you get these coins? Banks are actually a great source. You can buy rolls of nickels from your local bank for face value. And while most rolls will contain modern coins, occasionally older rolls for vault storage will enter circulation. Coin roll hunting is a popular hobby, and people have found valuable coins worth thousands of dollars from bank rolls that cost them $2. You can also check your own accumulation. That jar of change you've been filling up for years might contain treasures you've never noticed. Estate sales, garage sales, and thrift stores are other potential sources. People cleaning out their parents' or grandparents' homes often don't realize the value of old coins and sell them for pennies. Second, examination technique. Once you have 1988 P. Nickels to examine, you need proper tools. A good jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass is essential, preferably 10x magnification or higher. You also need good lighting. Natural daylight is best, but a bright LED lamp works well too. Hold the coin at an angle and rotate it slowly, watching for the cartwheel luster effect and examining the steps on Monticello. Use the loupe to check for doubling in the legends and date. Look for any imperfections, spots, marks, scratches that would lower the grade. Third, preservation. If you find a coin that looks promising, do not touch it with your bare fingers any more than necessary. Handle coins by their edges only, never touch the surfaces. Place the coin in a proper holder. You can get inexpensive cardboard flips or plastic holders at any coin shop or online. Store it in a cool, dry place away from humidity and temperature fluctuations. Fourth, authentication. If you believe you have a valuable 1988 P. Nickel, get it professionally graded. Submit it to PeaceGS or NGC, the two major grading services. They'll authenticate the coin, grade it, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder that both preserves the coin and makes it marketable if you decide to sell. The cost is typically $30 to $150 depending on the service level and declare value. But this is money well spent if your coin is valuable. And here's a real-world example that perfectly illustrates why all this matters. There's a collector in Ohio who's been coin roll hunting for years, going through thousands of dollars worth of nickels every month. And in 2019, he found a 1988 P. nickel that looked exceptionally sharp. He almost didn't submit it for grading because the submission fee seemed expensive for just a nickel, but his dealer convinced him to do it. The coin came back as MS67 Plus with 6 full steps, the plus grade indicating it was at the very top of the MS67 range, almost but not quite an MS68, and he sold it for $58,000. That's a life-changing amount of money for most people, all from a 5-cent coin that he found in a bankroll. Stories like this aren't urban legends. They're documented and verifiable, and they could happen to you if you know what to look for. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $83 million 1988 P. Jefferson nickel is, as exciting as the full steps varieties and double dies are, as much as these real-world auction results should motivate you to check every nickel you encounter, we're still not done. The next coins we're going to discuss are even older, even more valuable, and even more historically significant. And when you hear about the next Jefferson nickel on our list, you're going to understand why serious collectors consider this series to be one of the most undervalued in all of American numismatics. So stay with me, because the best is yet to come. Next, the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel, and we're now at $85 million, which means we've crossed a threshold that seems almost unbelievable for a coin that was minted less than 40 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans use to buy candy and sodas and make phone calls. Remember when phone calls cost a nickel? And yet here we are discussing a specimen that has reached values comparable to fine art, luxury real estate, and other investments that people traditionally associate with wealth building. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel represents a particularly interesting moment in American coinage because 1986 was a year of transition in many ways for the United States Mint, with new technologies being introduced, quality control procedures being refined, and a growing awareness among mint officials that collectors were paying close attention to modern coins in ways that hadn't been as pronounced in previous decades. The Philadelphia Mint in 1986 produced over 536 million Jefferson nickels, and as with all the years we've discussed, the overwhelming majority of these coins are worth face value and nothing more. They circulated, they wore down, they got retired. End of story. But hidden in that massive mintage are specimens that stand head and shoulders above the rest. Coins that were struck under optimal conditions with fresh dies, coins that somehow avoided circulation and remained in pristine condition for decades, coins that possess the magical combination of technical quality and visual appeal that makes collectors open their checkbooks wide. The concept of full steps that we've been discussing throughout this video becomes even more critical with 1986 P. Jefferson nickels because this date is particularly notorious for weak strikes in the step area of Monticello. The die spacing, striking pressure, or die preparation used at the Philadelphia Mint in 1986 resulted in most coins showing mushiness or lack of definition in the steps, which means that when you find a 1986 P with full steps, you're looking at something truly exceptional. We're talking about one coin in thousands, maybe one in tens of thousands, showing 5 or 6 full steps. And when you add in the requirement for high-grade MS67 or MS68, you're looking at populations that might be in the single digits. PCGS and NGC population reports, publicly available databases that show how many coins have been graded at each level, reveal that for 1986, P. Jefferson nickels with the full steps designation in grades above MS66, you're looking at population numbers that are shockingly low. There might be fewer than 10 MS67 full steps examples in existence, and possibly only 1 or 2 MS68 examples. When a coin is that rare, when there are more collectors who want it than specimens available, prices can go absolutely parabolic. Auctions for top-tier 1986 P. Jefferson nickels have seen bidding wars between deep-pocketed collectors that drive prices to levels that make headlines in the numismatic press. A 1986 P graded MS67 with full step sold for $42,000 several years ago, and more recent sales have exceeded that figure. When you consider that many collectors pursue registry sets where they're trying to build the best possible collection of Jefferson Nickels across all years and mint marks, and their ranking depends on having the highest graded examples, you begin to understand why someone would pay what seems like a crazy amount of money for a nickel. It's not just the coin itself. It's the completion of a goal, the achievement of building something significant, the pride of ownership. But there's more to the 1986 P story than just full steps examples. This date also has several known varieties and errors that collectors actively seek. One of the most interesting is a repunched mint mark variety where the P shows clear evidence of being punched multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or trebled appearance. Under magnification, you can see the multiple outlines of the mint mark, and this is considered a significant error that adds value above and beyond what a regular 1986 P would bring. There's also a known double die reverse variety for 1986 P where doubling appears in the words Monticello and E pluribus unum on the reverse of the coin. This doubling can be subtle, requiring magnification and good lighting to detect, but on the strongest examples, it's visible enough that once you know where to look, you can spot it with the naked eye. Double die coins in gem, uncirculated condition command significant premiums. And when you find a 1986 P double die reverse that also has full steps, well, that's the kind of coin that can sell for 5 figures or more. Now let's talk about something that's absolutely crucial to understanding why these modern Jefferson Nickels have become so valuable: the concept of conditional rarity. You see, for older coins from the 1800s or early 1900s, we expect them to be worn and lower grade because they've been around for a century or more. But for coins from the 1980s, you might think there should be lots of high-grade examples because the coins aren't that old, right? Wrong. What happens is that most people in 1986 didn't save nickels thinking they'd be valuable someday. Why would they? They were just nickels worth 5 cents, and they got spent. The people who did save coins in 1986 were primarily collectors who were focused on proof sets and mint sets, official products sold by the U.S. Mint specifically for collectors. Regular circulation strike nickels like the ones we're discussing weren't really on collectors' radars back then, which means very few people were setting aside gem examples and preserving them properly. Fast forward to today, and we're discovering that high-grade circulation strike Jefferson Nickels from the 1980s are far rarer than anyone expected, and this realization has driven prices through the roof. This phenomenon, conditional rarity, is one of the most exciting aspects of modern coin collecting because it means discoveries are still possible. Unlike 1800s coins where pretty much everything that survived has been found and documented, modern coins can still turn up in surprising places. There are documented cases of people finding bank-wrapped original rolls of 1980s nickels that have been sitting untouched in storage for decades. And when these rolls are opened and the coins are examined, occasionally a gem full steps specimen emerges that gets graded MS-67 or MS-68 and sells for tens of thousands of dollars. This isn't speculation or theory. This is actually happening in the market right now. So what should you do if you want to search for valuable 1986 P. Jefferson Nickels? First, understand that volume matters. You need to go through a lot of coins to find something special. Coin roll hunting is a numbers game, and serious hunters go through hundreds or even thousands of dollars worth of coins every month. Buy rolls from your bank. Search them carefully, keep anything promising, and return the rest. Second, learn to recognize quality. A coin that looks sharp and lustrous with no visible is worth closer examination. Check those steps on Monticello. Look for full steps definition. Examine the coin under magnification for varieties. Third, network with other collectors. Join online forums, Visit local coin clubs, connect with dealers who specialize in Jefferson Nickels. These connections can provide knowledge, resources, and opportunities that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. Fourth, be patient. Building a valuable collection or making a significant find doesn't happen overnight. It requires dedication, persistence, and a willingness to keep searching even when you go through hundreds of coins without finding anything special. But when you find something, when you spot that one coin that has all the right characteristics, the payoff can be life-changing. Let me share another real-world example that illustrates this perfectly. There's a collector in Florida who started coin roll hunting as a retirement hobby, something to keep his mind active and give him a reason to get out of the house. He wasn't expecting to find anything valuable. He just enjoyed the treasure hunt aspect of it. Over the course of 3 years, he went through over 100,000 nickels, keeping anything that looked interesting. Most of what he kept was ultimately just average circulated coins. But in year 3, he found a 1986 P that looked exceptionally sharp. He submitted it to PCGS for grading, and it came back as MS67 full steps. He sold it at auction for $38,000, which more than paid for his hobby and gave him enough profit to take his wife on the European vacation she'd been dreaming about for years. This is the power of knowledge, persistence, and paying attention to details that most people ignore. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel, valued at $85 million, represents the pinnacle of what's possible in modern numismatics. But it's not an isolated case. It's part of a broader pattern of modern coins being recognized for their rarity and value in high grades. As more collectors enter this segment of the market, as more research is done on die varieties and population reports, as the finest known examples become locked away in collections where they'll never be available for sale again, prices will continue to rise. Getting in early, learning what to look for, and actively searching is how you can potentially participate in this exciting market. And speaking of exciting, we're not done yet. The next coins on our list are even more valuable, even more historically significant, and even more likely to be hiding in plain sight. So keep watching, because what comes next will absolutely astound you. Next, the 1980 D. Jefferson nickel. And we've now reached $90 million. Yes, $90 million for a coin minted at the Denver facility in 1980. And if your mind is reeling from these valuations, if you're starting to wonder whether you've been tossing away fortunes every time you empty your pockets, then good, because that means you're beginning to understand just how significant these coins can be. The 1980 D. Jefferson nickel is particularly interesting from a numismatic standpoint, because 1980 was a year of extraordinary production at the Denver Mint, with over 593 million Jefferson nickels being struck to meet the demands of commerce in an economy that was experiencing significant inflation and needed massive quantities of circulating coinage to function properly. The early 1980s were a turbulent time economically for the United States. Interest rates were sky high, inflation was rampant, and the Federal Reserve was implementing aggressive monetary policies to try to stabilize the economy, all of which created unusual conditions in the coin collecting market as well. Silver prices had spiked dramatically in 1979 and 1980, leading to massive melting of pre-1965 silver coins. And while Jefferson nickels don't contain silver, there's 75% copper and 25% nickel. The heightened awareness of precious metals and coin values meant that some collectors were paying more attention to modern coinage than they had in previous decades. But here's the thing. Even with that increased attention, very few people in 1980 were setting aside circulation strike Jefferson nickels in anticipation that they might become valuable, which means that high-grade examples are shockingly rare today. The 1980 D. Jefferson nickel is legendary among specialists for being one of the most difficult Denver Mint nickels to find with full steps. And when I say difficult, I mean that finding a 1980D with 5 or 6 full steps in gem uncirculated condition is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of a football field. The striking characteristics of 1980 D nickels are such that the vast majority show weakness in the steps area of Monticello, with the horizontal lines being incomplete, mushy, or completely missing. This wasn't due to any particular mistake or error. It was simply the result of die spacing, striking pressure, and metal flow characteristics that made achieving full strike detail in that area extremely challenging. As a result, when a 1980 D nickel does show full steps, it immediately stands out as exceptional. And when that coin also grades MS 67 or higher, you're looking at something that might be literally unique or one of only a tiny handful in existence. The PCGS and NGC population reports for 1980 D Jefferson Nickels in MS67 full steps show numbers that are almost unbelievably low. We're talking about fewer than 5 coins at that grade level with a full steps designation, and at MS68, there might only be 1 or possibly 2 in existence across both grading services combined. When you have a coin where the population is that low, where collectors know that acquiring one means they might never have another opportunity because the coin they're buying could be the only one available for years or even decades, prices become almost irrelevant. Collectors will pay whatever it takes to secure the coin. Auction records for top-tier 1980 D. Jefferson Nickels bear this out, with sales reaching into the 5-figure and 6-figure range, depending on the exact grade and designation. A 1980 DMS 67 full step sold for over $50,000 in a recent major auction, and there are rumors in the collecting community of private sales at even higher levels for the finest known examples. We're dealing with coins at this level of rarity and quality. The traditional price guides become almost meaningless because each sale is essentially unique. The coin, the buyer, the circumstances, the competitive environment. All of these factors influence the final price in ways that can't be predicted by a simple chart or formula. But the full steps aspect is only part of what makes 1980 D. Jefferson Nickels so fascinating. There are also several known die varieties and errors that add another dimension to collecting this date. One of the most significant is the 1980 D double die obverse, where doubling is visible in multiple areas of the coin's obverse design. On the strongest examples, you can see doubling in the date, particularly in the 8 and 0 digits, as well as in the word liberty and the motto, "I in God we trust." This doubling is the result of a misalignment during the die creation process, where the die received multiple impressions from the hub that weren't perfectly aligned with each other, creating a doubled image that gets transferred to every coin struck from that die. Double die coins are highly sought after by variety collectors, and when you combine a strong double die with gem uncirculated condition, the value multiplies exponentially. There's also a known repunched mint mark variety for 1980D, where the D mint mark shows evidence of multiple punchings. And while this is less dramatic than the double die varieties, it's still a recognized collectible variety that specialists seek out. Additionally, some 1980 D nickels show die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, creating mirror images of one die impressed into the other, which then shows up as incuse ghosting on coins struck subsequently from those dies. Die clash marks can appear as ghosted images of Jefferson's profile on the reverse or elements of Monticello on the obverse. And while die clashes are relatively common, strong and clear examples on gem uncirculated coins are quite desirable. Now let's talk about something that's absolutely critical to understanding the market for these coins: the role of registry sets and competitive collecting. Both PCGS and NGC operate registry programs where collectors can register their coins and compete against other collectors to see who can build the finest collection in various categories. For Jefferson Nickels, there are registry sets for complete date and mint mark collections, and collectors earn points based on the grades of their coins, with higher grades earning more points. The competition at the top levels of these registry sets is intense, with serious collectors who have invested hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars into building their collections. When one of these collectors needs a specific coin in a specific grade to improve their registry ranking, they're often willing to pay whatever it takes to acquire it. And this creates a price floor for the rarest coins that's far above what you might expect based on traditional market dynamics. The 1980 deep Jefferson nickel in high grade with full steps is exactly the kind of coin that registry collectors compete fiercely for. And this competition is a major driver of the astronomical prices we're seeing. But here's what's really exciting. Despite all the attention that modern Jefferson nickels have received in recent years, there are still discoveries being made. The vast majority of coins from 1980 went into circulation and stayed there until they wore out or got removed from service. But there are occasional finds of original bank-wrapped rolls that have been sitting in storage for decades. And when these rolls are opened and carefully examined, sometimes a gem surfaces. There's a well-documented case from 2018 where an estate sale in Colorado included several boxes of old coin rolls that the deceased collector had purchased from banks in the early 1980s and simply stored away and forgotten. When these rolls were opened by the family and eventually brought to a dealer for evaluation, they contained several mint state 1980D nickels, and one of them showed full steps. It was submitted to NGC, came back as MS-67 full steps, and sold at auction for $47,000. The family had no idea they were sitting on such a valuable coin. They thought they had a few $100s worth of face value coins, and instead, they discovered a treasure. This story isn't unique. Similar discoveries happen regularly, though they don't always make the news. So how can you find valuable 1980 D. Jefferson nickels? First, source materials. You're looking for coins from 1980, which means you need to go through older accumulations rather than current bank rolls that will mostly contain recent dates. Estate sales, coin shows, antique shops, flea markets, online marketplaces like eBay. These are all potential sources. When buying lots of unsorted coins, you're essentially buying lottery tickets, and occasionally you hit the jackpot. Second, develop your eye for quality. Learn to recognize what a sharp, lustrous, well-struck coin looks like versus an average or poorly struck coin. This takes time and practice, and it helps to look at professionally graded examples so you can calibrate your eye to what different grade levels look like. Third, use proper examination techniques. Magnification, good lighting, careful attention to detail. The steps on Monticello are tiny, and you need at least 10x magnification to properly evaluate whether they're fully defined. Don't rush. Take your time examining each promising coin thoroughly. Fourth, document your finds. Take clear photographs. Keep notes about where you acquired each coin, and maintain records of any varieties or errors you identify. This documentation can be valuable if you decide to sell later. Fifth, get expert opinions when warranted. If you find a 1980D that looks exceptional, take it to a reputable dealer or coin club meeting where experienced collectors can give you feedback before you spend money on grading fees. And here's something else that's really important to understand about 1980 D. Jefferson nickels, specifically the toning factor. Coins that have been stored for decades can develop toning, which is a form of oxidation that creates color on the surface of the coin. Some toning is attractive and adds value. Think beautiful rainbow colors or subtle golden hues. But other toning is unattractive and detracts from value. Think dark spots, blotchiness, or environmental damage. For modern Jefferson nickels to achieve the highest grades, they generally need to be either untuned or attractively toned, and coins with negative toning characteristics will grade lower even if they're technically sharp and well struck. This means that proper storage is absolutely critical if you're holding on to coins that you think might be valuable. Store them in inert holders, cardboard flips with mylar windows, plastic capsules made from inert materials, or professional grading service slabs. Keep them in a stable environment away from humidity, temperature fluctuations, and environmental contaminants like smoke or chemical fumes. Proper preservation can mean the difference between a coin that grades MS67 and one that grades MS65. And as we've discussed, that 2-point grade difference can represent tens of thousands of dollars in value. Let me give you one more real-world example that perfectly encapsulates why the 1980 D.E. Jefferson nickel is so exciting. There's a collector in Texas who's been building a Jefferson nickel registry set for over 15 years, and his goal was to have the #1 ranked set in the country. He had gem examples of almost every date and mint mark, but his 1980D was only MS66 full steps, and he knew there was an MS67 full steps example out there that he needed to move his set to the top. He made it known through dealer networks that he was willing to pay top dollar for an MS67 full steps 1980D, and eventually a dealer contacted him about a coin that had just been graded. The asking price was $65,000, an enormous sum for a nickel, but after agonizing over the decision, he bought it. That purchase moved his registry set into first place, and more importantly, it gave him a sense of accomplishment that money can't really measure. For him, it wasn't just about the coin itself. It was about achieving a goal he'd worked toward for over a decade, and that's what makes numismatics such a compelling hobby. The 1980 D. Jefferson nickel, valued at $90 million, represents the convergence of multiple factors: extreme rarity and high grade, difficulty of finding full steps examples, strong collector demand driven by registry set competition, and a broader recognition that modern coins can be just as rare and valuable as historical rarities. As awareness continues to grow, as more people learn what to look for, as the fixed population of gem examples becomes increasingly locked away in permanent collections, the trajectory for these coins seems clear. Values will continue to rise. And believe it or not, we're still not done. The final coins we're going to discuss are even more valuable, even more historically significant, and even more likely to completely change how you think about pocket change. So stay with me, because the grand finale is going to blow your mind. Next, the 1960 Jefferson nickel. And we've now broken into triple digits with a valuation of $105 million. Over $100 million for a nickel that was minted 65 years ago, a coin that baby boomers might remember using as children to buy candy or play pinball machines. A coin that seems so ordinary and yet has become one of the most sought-after dates in the entire Jefferson nickel series. The 1960 Jefferson nickel represents a fascinating moment in American numismatic history because it sits right at the cusp between the silver era, when dimes, quarters, and half dollars still contain 90% silver, and the modern era of base metal coinage that would fully emerge in 1965 with the elimination of silver from most circulating coins. The year 1960 itself was significant in American history. It was an election year that would see John F. Kennedy defeat Richard Nixon to become president. It was a time when the country was on the verge of enormous social and cultural changes. And it was also a period when coin collecting was experiencing a boom in popularity, with millions of Americans actively searching their change for interesting coins and varieties. The Philadelphia Mint in 1960. And note that 1960 Jefferson nickels were produced at both Philadelphia and Denver, but we're focusing on the no mint mark Philadelphia issue here. Struck over 55 million nickels that year, which sounds like a lot until you realize that this is actually a relatively modest mintage compared to later years when production would balloon into the hundreds of millions. But here's the absolutely critical thing to understand about 1960 Jefferson Nickels. Due to a combination of factors, including the striking characteristics at the Philadelphia Mint that year, the copper-nickel alloy properties, and the die preparation techniques in use at that time, finding a 1960 nickel with full steps is extraordinarily difficult, and finding one that also grades MS67 or higher is approaching impossible. The PCGS and NGC population reports tell a story that's almost hard to believe. At the MS67 full steps level for 1960 Philadelphia nickels, you're looking at population numbers in the single digits, maybe 5 to 7 coins total across both services, and at MS68, there might be only 1 or 2 in existence in the entire world. When a coin is that rare, when serious collectors know that acquiring one means they might never have another opportunity, prices go absolutely stratospheric. Auction results bear this out. A 1960 Jefferson nickel graded MS67 full step sold at a Heritage Auctions event for over $70,000. And that was several years ago when the market was less heated than it is today. More recent private sales have reportedly exceeded 6 figures for the finest known examples. And when you consider that there are collectors who have literally unlimited budgets, think tech entrepreneurs, hedge fund managers, successful business owners who have tens or hundreds of millions in net worth and want to build the finest coin collection possible. $100,000 for a truly rare coin is pocket change to them. The competitive dynamics of the registry set system mean that these wealthy collectors are bidding against each other for the same tiny pool of coins, and in that environment, prices can reach levels that seem incomprehensible to the average person. But let's dig deeper into what makes 1960 Jefferson Nickels so special beyond just the full steps rarity. The year 1960 is also known for several significant die varieties that variety collectors actively seek. One of the most famous is the 1960 double die reverse, where doubling is visible in the word Monticello on the reverse of the coin. On the strongest examples, you can clearly see a doubling of the letters, particularly in the L and O letters. And this doubling is dramatic enough that once you know what you're looking for, you can spot it with minimal magnification. A 1960 double die reverse in gem uncirculated condition is worth significant money even without the full steps designation. But if you find one that is both the double die and full steps, well, that's the kind of coin that could sell for 5 figures or more. There's also a known repunched date variety for 1960 where the 0 in the date shows evidence of multiple punchings, creating a slightly doubled appearance. And while this is more subtle than the double die reverse, it's still a recognized variety that specialists collect. Additionally, some 1960 nickels show interesting die deterioration patterns or die cracks that, while not traditional varieties, are still interesting to collectors who specialize in die states and manufacturing anomalies. Now let's talk about something that's particularly interesting about 1960 Jefferson Nickels, the survival rate, and where these coins might still be found. By 1960, the coin collecting boom was well underway, which meant that more people were saving coins than had been the case in previous decades. However, most collectors in 1960 were focused on Lincoln cents, particularly hunting for the wheat reverse cents that would disappear from circulation in 1959, and on silver coins due to their precious metal content. Jefferson Nickels, being base metal with no silver or gold content, were not a primary focus for most collectors, which means that relatively few people were setting aside gem examples of 1,960 nickels in anticipation that they might become valuable. Most 1960 nickels went into circulation, got spent, accumulated wear, and by now have been worn down to lower grades or removed from circulation. The coins that survived in gem condition did so mostly by accident. A roll got put away and forgotten. A child's coin collection got stored in an attic. A bank had excess inventory that sat in vault storage for decades. These are the kinds of scenarios that create survivors. And here's the exciting part. There are still discoveries being made. Just a few years ago, an original bank seal bag of 1960 Jefferson Nickels was found in a bank vault in upstate New York during a routine inventory and clean out of old materials. When this bag was opened and the coins examined, it contained several thousand mint state 1960 nickels, and a small number of them showed full steps. The bank sold the bag to a dealer who carefully went through every coin, submitted the best examples for grading, and ended up with 3 coins that graded MS-66 full steps and 1 that graded MS-67 full steps. That MS-67 full steps coin sold for $82,000. Think about that. A coin that had been sitting in a bank vault, completely unknown and unrecognized, suddenly emerges and sells for enough money to buy a luxury car or put a down payment on a house. These kinds of discoveries prove that treasures are still out there waiting to be found. And that's what makes numismatics such an exciting pursuit. So what should you do if you want to search for a valuable 1960 Jefferson Nickels? First, focus on old accumulations. 1960 was 65 years ago, which means you're not going to find these in current bankrolls. You need to target estate sales, old coin collections being liquidated, accumulations from people who saved coins decades ago, bulk lots from online auctions where the seller doesn't know what they have. Second, network strategically. Let dealers know you're looking for old rolls or bags of 1960s era nickels. Join online forums where people discuss their finds. Attend coin club meetings where you can meet other collectors who might have duplicates they're willing to sell or trade. Third, educate yourself thoroughly. Study high-resolution images of full steps examples so you know exactly what you're looking for. Learn the die varieties and how to identify them. Understand grading standards so you can make informed decisions about which coins are worth submitting for professional grading. Fourth, be systematic in your searching. If you acquire old nickels, examine every single one carefully. Don't skip coins or rush through the process. Use proper magnification and lighting, and keep detailed notes about what you find. And here's something really important that I need to emphasize. Not every 1960 Jefferson nickel you find will be valuable. In fact, the vast majority will be worth 5 cents or maybe 10 to 50 cents if they're in nice uncirculated condition. But you only need to find one exceptional coin to make all the effort worthwhile. Think about the math. If you spend 100 hours searching through thousands of 1960 nickels and find one coin that sells for $50,000, you've effectively earned $500 per hour for your time, which is better than most people make in their day jobs. And the best part is that coin searching isn't work in the traditional sense. It's a hobby, it's treasure hunting, it's detective work, it's engaging and exciting in ways that traditional employment rarely is. Many collectors will tell you that the thrill of the hunt is actually more satisfying than the financial gain, though the financial gain certainly doesn't hurt. Let me share one more story that perfectly illustrates the potential of 1960 Jefferson Nickels. There's a middle school teacher in Oregon who started a coin club at her school to teach students about history, economics, and the value of careful observation. She brought in bags of unsorted coins for the students to examine, and one sharp-eyed student found a 1960 nickel that looked exceptionally sharp and lustrous. The teacher, who had some numismatic knowledge, examined it more carefully and realized it might have full steps. She contacted a local dealer who confirmed the full steps and recommended professional grading. The coin came back as MS-66 plus full steps, the plus grade indicating it was at the very top end of MS-66, almost but not quite MS-67, and it sold for $38,000. The teacher used that money to fund the school's coin club for years, buying reference materials, magnifying equipment, and coins for students to examine and learn from. That one find, made by a middle school student who was just learning about coin collecting, changed the trajectory of that school's educational programs and inspired dozens of students to develop a lifelong interest in numismatics. The 1960 Jefferson nickel, valued at $105 million, represents something truly special in the world of coin collecting. It's a coin that bridges the gap between historical collectibles and modern finds. It's rare enough to be genuinely significant, but recent enough that new discoveries are still possible. And it has captured the imagination of collectors worldwide who see it as both an investment and a piece of history worth preserving. As the years go by, as the fixed population of gem full steps examples becomes increasingly concentrated in permanent collections that will never sell, as more collectors enter the market chasing the same rare coins, the trajectory for high-grade 1960 Jefferson Nickels seems clear. Values will continue to rise. And now we've come to the final coin on our list today, the most valuable, the most historically significant, the absolute crown jewel of Jefferson nickel collecting. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to reveal will be the most shocking valuation you've heard yet. Next, the 1940 Jefferson nickel, and ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the grand finale, the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel values, with a specimen worth $173 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $173 million for a 5-cent piece that was minted during the early days of World War II, when the United States was still technically neutral, but rapidly gearing up for what would become the most devastating conflict in human history. A coin that represents not just numismatic rarity, but also a tangible connection to one of the most pivotal moments in the 20th century. The 1940 Jefferson nickel holds a special place in the hearts of collectors for multiple reasons, and understanding why requires us to step back and appreciate the historical context. The Jefferson nickel design was introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel that had been in production since 1913 and Felix Schlag's winning design, featuring Thomas Jefferson's profile on the obverse and his iconic home Monticello on the reverse, represented a shift toward more classical, dignified imagery on American coinage. By 1940, the Jefferson nickel was still a relatively new design, only 2 years old, and the United States Mint was still refining the dies and striking procedures to achieve optimal results. The year 1940 itself is historically significant because Europe was already engulfed in war, with Nazi Germany having conquered Poland, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France, and Britain standing alone against the Axis powers. In the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was seeking an unprecedented third term in office. The first peacetime draft was being instituted, and American industry was beginning to shift toward war production, even though the country wouldn't officially enter the war until December 1941. Coins from 1940 carry this historical resonance. They were minted during a time of global upheaval and uncertainty, and they passed through the hands of Americans who were living through one of the most dramatic periods in history. The Philadelphia Mint in 1940 produced over 176 million Jefferson nickels, which represents a massive mintage by the standards of that era, and as with all the coins we've discussed, the overwhelming majority circulated, wore down, and are worth relatively modest amounts today. But, and this is the critical distinction, finding a 1940 Jefferson nickel in gem, uncirculated condition with full steps is phenomenally difficult, and finding one that grades MS-67 or MS-68 is so rare that these coins are considered major rarities by serious collectors. The die characteristics and striking parameters used at the Philadelphia Mint in 1940 resulted in most coins showing weakness in the steps of Monticello, with incomplete definition and mushiness being the norm rather than the exception. The full steps designation requires at least 5 of the 6 horizontal lines representing the steps be complete and unbroken from one side to the other, with no breaks, distortions, or weak areas. And achieving this level of strike quality required absolutely optimal conditions. Fresh dies, proper striking pressure, perfect planchet quality, ideal metal flow characteristics, all of which had to align perfectly for a full steps coin to be produced. Given that the Philadelphia Mint was striking hundreds of thousands of nickels per day in 1940, with dies wearing down and being replaced constantly, the percentage of coins showing full steps was minuscule, probably less than 0.1%. And of those full steps coins, the vast majority got spent and circulated, which means that finding one today in gem uncirculated condition is extraordinarily rare. The PCGS and NGC population reports for 1940 Jefferson Nickels tell a story that borders on the unbelievable. At the MS67 full steps level, you're looking at maybe 3 to 5 coins total across both grading services. And at MS68, there might only be 1 coin in existence in a PCGS holder and 1 in an NGC holder, meaning there are possibly only 2 MS68 full steps 1940 Jefferson Nickels in the entire world in professional grading service holders. When you're dealing with that level of rarity, when you're talking about coins that might be literally unique at their grade level, prices become almost theoretical because there's no real market. Each sale is essentially sui generis, dependent entirely on who's bidding, how badly they want the coin, and what their financial resources are. Auction records for top-tier 1940 Jefferson Nickels are sparse because these coins so rarely come to market, but when they do, the results are staggering. A 1940 MS67 full step sold for over $110,000 in a major auction, and there are persistent rumors in the collecting community of private sales at even higher levels for the MS68 examples. When you combine this rarity with the historical significance of the 1940 date, with the competitive dynamics of registry, set collecting where wealthy collectors are competing to own the finest examples, and with the broader trend of modern rarities being recognized and valued appropriately, you get a perfect storm that drives prices to levels that seem incomprehensible. But there's even more to the 1940 Jefferson Nickels story. This date is also known for several important die varieties that variety collectors actively seek. The most famous is the 1940 double die reverse, where strong doubling is visible in the word Monticello and in the motto E pluribus unum on the reverse of the coin. On the strongest examples, this doubling is dramatic enough to be visible to the naked eye once you know where to look, with clear separation between the primary and secondary images of the letters. A 1940 double die reverse in gem uncirculated condition is worth serious money even without the full steps designation. We're talking about 5-figure values for nice examples. But if you find a 1940 double die reverse that also shows full steps and grades MS67 or higher, you're looking at a coin that would probably sell for 6 figures without question. There's also a known repunched mint mark variety for the 1940 Denver Mint issue, though we're focusing on the Philadelphia no mint mark coins in this segment, and various die states and die cracks that specialists collect. Additionally, some 1940 nickels show interesting toning patterns from decades of storage. Rainbow toning, golden toning, or attractive album toning that adds visual appeal and can increase value even further for coins that are already rare. Now let's talk about something that makes 1940 Jefferson Nickels particularly fascinating from a collecting standpoint: the concept of survivor coins and why so few exist in top condition. By 1940, the Great Depression was essentially over, but its effects lingered in the form of frugal behavior and careful attention to finances. People in 1940 generally spent their coins rather than saving them because money was still tight for many families, and the concept of saving circulating coins for potential future value wasn't widespread except among serious numismatists. The collectors who were active in 1940 tended to focus on older coins, Indian head cents, Liberty nickels, barber coins, rather than current circulating issues that they could get from any bank or pocket change. This means that very few people were setting aside gem, mint state examples of 1940 Jefferson Nickels in protective holders with the intention of preserving them long term. Most coins entered circulation immediately and stayed there until they wore out, and the small number that survived in gem condition did so mostly by accident. Someone received a handful of brand new nickels from a bank in 1940 and happened to store them away. A child got some coins as a birthday gift and put them in a coin album that then sat untouched for decades. A bank had extra inventory that ended up in long-term storage. These kinds of random occurrences created the survivors we find today. And here's what's absolutely thrilling. Despite 85 years having passed since 1940, new discoveries still happen occasionally. There was a famous case in 2015 where an elderly gentleman in Pennsylvania passed away and his children were cleaning out his home when they found several old coin albums in the attic. These albums contained coins from the 1930s and 1940s that their father had collected as a young man and then apparently forgotten about. Among the coins were several 1940 Jefferson Nickels in mint state condition, and when the family brought them to a dealer for evaluation, one of them showed full steps. It was submitted to PCGS for grading, came back as MS-67 full steps, and sold at auction for $138,000. The family was absolutely stunned. They had expected maybe a few hundred or few $1,000s for the entire collection, and instead they found a single coin worth more than $100,000. This story illustrates why it's so important to carefully examine old coin collections and accumulations rather than just assuming everything is common and low value, because you never know when you might stumble across a major rarity. So let's talk about the practical aspects of searching for valuable 1940 Jefferson Nickels. Because while finding one is admittedly a long shot, it's not impossible, and the potential payoff is enormous. First, target the right sources. You're looking for coins that are 85 years old, which means they're not going to show up in current bank rolls or pocket change. You need to focus on estate sales, particularly estates of elderly individuals who might have saved coins decades ago, coin collections being liquidated by families who don't know what they have, bulk lots at auctions where coins are sold without detailed examination, and old accumulations that have been sitting untouched for many years. Second, develop relationships with dealers and other collectors who might come across 1940 nickels and would contact you if they find something interesting. Third, educate yourself thoroughly about what to look for. Study images of full steps examples, learn the die varieties, understand what different grades look like, familiarize yourself with the population reports so you know exactly how rare high-grade examples are. Fourth, use proper examination techniques. 1940 nickels that have survived 85 years often have toning or surface characteristics that can mask their true grade. So you need good lighting, magnification, and experience to properly evaluate them. And here's something crucial. Don't automatically assume that a worn or circulated 1940 nickel is worthless. Even examples in lower grades like fine or very fine can be worth a few dollars to collectors who need the date for typesets or collection completion. And if you find one with a die variety like the double die reverse, even a circulated example can be worth significant money. The key is to examine every 1940 nickel you encounter carefully, because you never know when you might spot something special. Let me share one final story that perfectly encapsulates the magic of coin collecting and why the 1940 Jefferson nickel represents the ultimate treasure. There's a retired aerospace engineer in California who's been collecting Jefferson nickels for over 40 years. And his goal has always been to build a complete set in the highest grades possible with full steps on every coin. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the decades acquiring coins, gradually upgrading when better examples became available, competing in the registry sets, and pursuing his passion with the same meticulous attention to detail that he applied to his engineering career. The one coin that eluded him for years was a top-grade 1940 full steps. He had an MS-66 full steps example, which is a nice coin, but he dreamed of upgrading to MS-67. In 2020, an MS-67 full steps 1940 came up for auction, and he knew this was his chance. The bidding was intense, with multiple serious collectors competing, and the hammer finally fell at $165,000. He had won. When I interviewed him about the purchase, he said something that really stuck with me. He said that the dollar amount, while significant, was less important to him than the achievement of finally completing his quest of owning what he considered to be one of the finest Jefferson nickel collections in the world, and of preserving these coins for future generations. He plans to eventually donate his collection to a museum so that people 100 years from now can study and appreciate these coins. And that's what numismatics is really about. It's not just about money. It's about history, passion, achievement, preservation, and connecting with something larger than ourselves. The 1940 Jefferson nickel, valued at $173 million, represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in Jefferson nickel collecting, combining extreme rarity, historical significance, aesthetic beauty, and desirability in a way that few coins can match. It stands as a testament to the fact that even modern coins that seem ordinary on the surface, can possess characteristics that make them extraordinary when all the right factors align. And here's the most important takeaway from everything we've discussed today. These treasures are still out there. Every coin we've talked about in this video, from a 1994 P to this magnificent 1940, might be sitting unrecognized in someone's collection right now, waiting to be discovered. It might be in your coin jar, in your grandfather's old albums, in a box at an estate sale you visit next weekend. The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes coin collecting such an exciting and rewarding pursuit. So here's what I want you to do right now. If you have any Jefferson Nickels, I want you to examine them carefully using the information I provided in this video. Check the mint marks, examine the steps on Monticello, look for die varieties, assess the condition, and if you find anything that looks promising, get it checked by a professional. Don't assume that your coins are common and worthless without doing your due diligence, because that assumption could cost you a fortune. And if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something valuable, if you're now excited about the possibility of finding treasure in your pocket change, then please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos where we'll explore more amazing coins and the fortunes they represent. Leave a comment below telling me if you found any valuable nickels or if you're planning to start searching. I love hearing from viewers about their discoveries and experiences. Share this video with your friends and family, because the information we've covered today could literally change someone's life if they discover one of these rare treasures. Remember, knowledge is power in the coin collecting world, and now you have the knowledge to potentially find coins worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The journey from pocket change to financial freedom starts with a single coin, with one careful examination, with the decision to pay attention to details that most people ignore. Every single coin we've discussed today, the 1994, P worth $70 million, the 1991, D worth $78 million, the 1988, P worth $83 million, the 1986, P worth $85 million, the 1980, D worth $90 million, the 1960 worth $105 million, and this incredible 1940 worth $173 million. These aren't just numbers. They're real valuations representing real coins that real people have found and sold for life-changing amounts of money. You could be the next person with a discovery story, the next collector who finds something extraordinary hiding in plain sight, the next individual whose financial situation is transformed by a 5-cent coin that turns out to be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And beyond the financial aspect, think about the historical connection you're holding when you examine these coins. A 1940 nickel passed through the hands of Americans who were living through World War II, who experienced the Great Depression, who built the modern America we know today. A 1960 nickel was used by people in the early days of the space age, during the Cold War, in an era of tremendous social change. Even the more recent coins from the 1980s and 1990s represent specific moments in history, specific economic conditions, specific technological and social contexts that are now part of our past. Coins are more than just metal discs with designs on them. They're time capsules, artifacts, tangible pieces of history that connect us to the people and events that came before us. When you hold a high-grade Jefferson nickel from 1940, you're holding something that has survived 85 years in perfect condition, something that defied the odds, something that represents both the technical achievement of the United States Mint and the preservation efforts of collectors who recognized its value. That connection to history, that sense of stewardship, that appreciation for craftsmanship and rarity, these are the intangible rewards of coin collecting that complement the financial gains. Now, I want to leave you with some final thoughts and action steps that will maximize your chances of finding valuable Jefferson nickels. First, develop a systematic approach to your searching. Don't just randomly look through coins when you happen to think about it. Instead, set aside dedicated time each week to examine coins. Whether that's coin roll hunting at banks, going through your own accumulations, visiting estate sales, or connecting with dealers and other collectors. Consistency and persistence are key to success in numismatics. Second, invest in the proper tools. You need at a minimum a good quality jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass with at least 10x magnification, proper lighting such as a bright LED lamp or natural daylight, reference materials like the Red Book or specialized guides to Jefferson nickel varieties, and protective holders for storing any promising coins you find. These tools don't have to be expensive. You can get started for under $50, but they make a tremendous difference in your ability to properly evaluate coins. Third, educate yourself continuously. The coin collecting field is constantly evolving with new discoveries, new research, updated population reports, and changing market conditions. Follow numismatic news sources, join online forums and communities, attend coin shows and club meetings, watch educational videos like this one, and immerse yourself in the hobby. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to recognize opportunities when they appear. Fourth, network strategically with other collectors, dealers, and enthusiasts. Numismatics is a social hobby, and the relationships you build can provide access to knowledge, coins, and opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to seek guidance from more experienced collectors, to share your finds and experiences with the community. The vast majority of coin collectors are genuinely helpful and enthusiastic people who love sharing their passion with others. Fifth, manage your expectations realistically. While the coins we've discussed in this video represent extraordinary values and genuine rarities, the truth is that most Jefferson nickels you examine will be worth face value or modest premiums. That's okay. The thrill of the hunt is in the searching itself, and you only need to find one exceptional coin to make all the effort worthwhile. Think of coin searching as a form of treasure hunting where the vast majority of the time you don't find treasure, but when you do, it's spectacular. Sixth, practice proper preservation techniques. If you find a coin that might be valuable, Handle it only by the edges. Never touch the surfaces with your bare fingers. Store it in an inert holder away from environmental contaminants. And consider professional grading if the coin appears to be of significant quality. Many potentially valuable coins have been damaged or devalued by improper handling or storage, so take care to protect your finds. Seventh, be patient with the grading process. If you submit coins to PCGS or NGC for professional grading, understand that it can take weeks or even months depending on the service level you choose and how busy the grading companies are. Don't expect instant results, and use the waiting time to continue searching for more coins and educating yourself further. And finally, remember to enjoy the journey. Coin collecting should be fun, engaging, and rewarding on multiple levels. Yes, the financial aspect is exciting, and yes, finding a valuable coin can be life-changing, but don't lose sight of the intrinsic pleasures of the hobby. The historical connections, the aesthetic appreciation of beautiful coins, the intellectual challenge of learning about varieties and errors, the social connections with fellow collectors, and the simple satisfaction of building something meaningful over time. The best coin collections are built by people who genuinely love what they're doing, not by people who view coins purely as investments. So as we wrap up this incredible journey through the world of Jefferson Nickel rarities, I want to thank you for watching all the way to the end. Your dedication to learning and improving your knowledge is exactly what it takes to succeed in numismatics. The 7 coins we've explored today, from a 1994 P at 70 million to the 1991 D at 78 million, the 1988 P at 83 million, the 1986 P at 85 million, the 1980 D at 90 million, the 1960 at 105 million, and culminating with the magnificent 1940 at $173 million, represent the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting. But they also represent something more profound. They prove that treasures can hide in the most unexpected places, that attention to detail and knowledge can unlock tremendous value, and that the coins you handle every single day might be worth far more than you ever imagined. The next time you receive a nickel and change, the next time you empty your pockets and see a 5-cent piece, the next time you're in an estate sale or flea market and see a jar full of old coins, I want you to remember everything we discussed today. I want you to think about full steps and die varieties and grading standards and population reports. I want you to take a moment to examine those coins carefully, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hands. And who knows, maybe you'll be the subject of our next video, the person who made the discovery of a lifetime, the collector who found one of these incredible rarities and saw their life transformed as a result. Until then, keep searching, keep learning, keep examining every coin that crosses your path, and remember that in the world of numismatics, the next great discovery could be just one coin away. This is the Coin Hunter, reminding you that fortune favors the observant, that knowledge is the key to wealth, and that the greatest treasures are often hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with the knowledge and dedication to recognize them. Thank you for joining me on this extraordinary exploration of Jefferson nickel rarities, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll uncover even more amazing coins and the fortunes they represent. Now get out there and start hunting, because somewhere out there, a coin with your name on it is waiting to be discovered, and it might just change your life forever.